Chapter 17. "This is never going to work," Dion complained as they got out of Lu Zen's car. Richard grinned. "It will work," he insisted. "Trust me." Dion shook her head, but finally he sighed. "Okay," he said. "I guess we'll give it a go." After all, he didn't have any better ideas. The two of them approached the glass doors of the hotel's front entrance. The armed guards standing there eyed them, but made no move to stop them before entering the building. Past those two men stood two more on either side of the metal detectors. Dion hesitated when he saw the guards. He had gone back and forth past them several times, but this would be the first time he was trying to do something criminal. "Go," Richard hissed behind him, and Dion took a long, lurching step forward. He wobbled on his feet a bit, and a heavy, unzipped duffel bag slung over his shoulder slipped free. "No!" Dion shouted, lunging for the bag, but there was simply no way he could get to it in time. The bag hit the ground, falling completely open, and out spilled a huge pile of posters and snacks. Papers, chips, cookies, and nuts everywhere. Dion moaned, dropping to his knees and grabbing the bag. I'm really sorry," he told the guards as the hotel staff who were hurrying over. "Don't worry, I'll pick it all up. I'm really, really sorry." He started scooping up posters and shoving them back in his bag. Several of the hotel staff started to help him gather everything. The guards didn't bother to help. They were laughing, however. This was probably the funniest thing they'd seen in a while. Richard was walking past them, and they barely even noticed him. Finally, Dion had everything back in the bag. He rose to his feet, thanked everyone for their help, apologized again, and then stepped through the metal detector. It didn't beep, and with a wave at the guard, Dion headed for the elevator. Richard was already there, and together they waited for the next elevator. Richard was carrying a bag too, but his was a little smaller. It also matched his coat so well that it was difficult to notice. They rode up to Dion's room together. Once they were both inside, Dion tossed his bag on the bed and took the smaller bag from Richard. Setting that bag down more gently, he carefully unzipped the side that had been closed. Then Dion reached in and lifted Gobi out. "So, what do you think?" he asked her. "Your first elevator ride. Far as I know, did you like it?" Gobi licked his cheek in reply. Dion laughed. "I'll take that as a yes," he said. Gobi had enjoyed the ride in the funny bag and the strange box that moved up towards the sky. And then, when it stopped, the doors had opened and they had stepped back out, but everything was different. Before, it had been big, open space with lots of people standing about. Now, it was much narrower and darker, and there were doors on both sides. They stopped at one door, and a tall man pulled something out of his pocket. He fit that into a strange hole in the door, twisted, and suddenly the door swung open. Then they were in a room. Her and him and the other man she remembered and liked from the race. And finally the tall man pulled her out of the bag. Yes. "What now?" Dion wondered as he sank out into the hotel bed with Gobi in his lap. Richard shrugged. "Lay low," he suggested. "We've got that dinner tomorrow night, but nothing between now and then, so just relax, get some sleep, hang out with Gobi." He ruffled her fur. "Call me if you need anything." "I will, thanks." Dion watched his friend go. Then he turned to Gobi. "Looks like it's just you and me," he told her. He reached for the television remote. "Want to watch some TV? I should warn you, though, we only get 2 channels. Gobi didn't seem to mind. She curled up beside him on the bed and quickly fell asleep. Dion laughed. He wished he could take a nap that easily. Then he turned on the TV and turned the volume down so he wouldn't wake her. The rest of the day was quite nice. Dion fell asleep for a while as well. When he and Gobi both woke up, he balled up some of his socks and tossed them so she would have something to chase and rustle and bite. He set out some food and water for her, and whenever she started to look anxious, he tucked her back into his bag and took the elevator down to the basement parking lot to let her relieve herself. He had planned to just take her to the back corner, well away from cars, But once they were down there, he caught sight of the parking lot exit, where those bushes were those bushes by it. He approached carefully with Gobi at his side. They were. The hotel had planted a small patch of bushes right next to the exit, probably to match the plants that lined the walk and in the front lawn outside. That was much better than making her relieve herself on bare concrete and against a wall. Dion gave Gobi a little privacy while she went, but stayed close by. The last thing they needed was someone driving in and spotting her. No one did, and they made it back upstairs without incident. Gobi seemed perfectly happy with this arrangement. She didn't bark once and seemed fine with riding in the bag. After all the stress of losing her and looking for her, it was nice to have a day of peace and quiet, just the two of them. The next morning, though, Dion realized that he had a small problem. He had all the food he'd gotten from Gobi the other day, but nothing for himself, and he was starving. She was still asleep on the bed, snoring and twitching as always. Dion hated to wake her up. Surely he could go downstairs, grab some food, and get back before she woke up. He decided to risk it. Stepping carefully out to go downstairs, get some food, and come back up. But when he returned, he was surprised to see the housekeeping cart on his floor. Then he saw that the door to his room was open. "Gobi," he shouted, forgetting all about the need to be quiet. The need to find Gobi was a whole lot stronger. Charging into the room, Dion checked the bed first. Empty. Then he scanned the rest of the room. Also empty. He was about to run down to the lobby when he noticed that the bathroom door was shut. Strange. He was sure he had left it open. Very carefully he opened the door. There, wiping down the bathroom counter, was one of the hotel maids. And sitting in the bathtub watching her was Gobi, who looked very entertained by all of this. Her tail was wagging furiously, and she panted at Dion when he spotted him. But she still didn't bark, nor did she get ready to leave her new perch. Instead, after wiggling her eyebrows at Dion, she hunkered down and went back to watching the maid. Evidently, what she was doing was a whole lot more interesting than even chasing after Dion's socks. Dion tried talking to the maid, but quickly gave up. He had wanted to explain how much trouble he'd be in if anyone found out he and Gobi were up here with him. But she didn't speak any English, and she didn't she didn't speak Chinese. Finally, he pulled out his wallet and handed her 100 yen note. That was only $15 back home. Then he mimed, not saying anything about Gobi. The maid nodded. Whether she actually knew what he said or not was a whole other story. For right now, she wasn't running downstairs to tell the manager that Dion had smuggled a dog into his room. That would have to be enough. Privately, Dion suspected that Gobi would get sick of being stuck in the hotel room for days, or even weeks on the end. But it did give the two of them the chance to recover a little. He checked out the scar on her head. It looked as if she were finally starting to heal. "What or who did this to you?" Dion asked, brushing fur away from the scar a little. Eventually, the maid finished cleaning. "Thank you," Dion said, and meant it. He watched as she collected all of her cleaning gear and headed for the door. It was only after she'd left that Dion wedged some of the couch cushions against the door to the hall. This way, they would rattle every time the ground shook from people walking by or the elevator running and alarm Gobi into barking. As long as no one else tried to get into his room, he and Gobi were all set.